Okay, so for Clip Studio, the first thing that it's going to probably ask you to do is to select a canvas size. So what you want to do first is go right to the end to the animation section, or there's the up and down arrows, and select animation. From there, there's a set of presets. I think it's set to 1280 by 720. Don't use that one, use at least 1080p. That's probably the best if you're just getting started. So you can edit things if you want. So the first thing you can edit is size output frame. That's just the size that you're working on, or it will come out to. So that's the final video size. You've got your resolution. It's set at 192 by default, but it can actually be set to 140 for actual work as standard. You've got title safe, which actually just puts a little border on the inside, so you don't need to worry about that. Then you've got overflow frame. What this does is it lets you have a larger frame to work with. So if you need extra space at the side, you can just do that, or that. But the actual animation will still be 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. Overflow frame doesn't really change that. Blank space, it does pretty much the same thing as overflow frame, but it doesn't change the canvas size, it just adds space at the top and bottom. So let me just get rid of all of those changes. Oh, and any changes that you do make can be saved by hitting the Save to Hard Disk button just at the side. Okay, so after that we have timeline settings. So we're going to want the frame rate to be at 24 frames per second. It's up to you what you prefer for how you want to number it, whether it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through, or if you prefer doing it in seconds and frames. It's your preference. And after that, it's shot template and cell template. These are really tricky to use. Sometimes it's just easier to just ignore it and just import the template after you're set up, because otherwise it messes things up if it's slightly larger, slightly smaller than the output frame. So it's not particularly useful in my opinion. So we're just going to go with the basic settings for basically a HD YouTube ready animation. Okay, so from here, the timeline. A lot of people find it really confusing, but that's because Clip Studio are deliberately going out of their way to confuse you. A lot of their default settings don't make much sense and you have to change them. So the first thing you're going to want to do is come down to the hamburger menu, just click that and make the following changes. Playback setting. You're going to want to change it from play all frames to play in real time, because otherwise the animation is very sluggish. You're also going to want to hit prefer speed to prefer quality, because once again it will slow it down. Render playback before starting, render 2D camera, loop play. You can obviously hit play all frames if you need to see everything, but it kind of loses the motion. So with Clip Studio you have to choose between whether or not you want to see the motion or see every individual frames. The other thing you might want to change is thumbnail size. Just set that to whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. From there, we have the timeline buttons. So let me just, I'll explain what I'm doing in a second, but for now, I'm just gonna make some cells and I'll show you how I did that. So navigating. So this button right here is the timeline tool. And what it lets you do is drag your way through the timeline without actually touching the timeline. So handy in specific situations. The next button after that is add timeline. That's just complicated, ignore it. There's the zoom into the timeline. That just makes the timeline larger to see. Zoom out, which gives you more space. From there, you've got your basic controls like go to the end of the animation, go a frame behind, play, frame forward, go to the end. So fairly easy to work. And then once again, you've got loop play. So I'll play through this. And it will just keep on looping it. If I switch off, just place it through once. You'll notice at the side I have the frame rate playing as well. To get that, you go to, I believe, Window, or is it View? I think it's Window. And there's a button for display frames per second. Just need to find it. Everything is very hidden. There it is, show playback frames per second. So without that, you really don't know what you're getting. And with it, tells you exactly what you're doing. And this is why you want it to be on. Because if you go to play all frames, you see it drops right down to 12. So whatever you do, just switch on play frame back. Okay, so after this, we have cell create folder. We have the create cell button. And then we have reuse cell, which is the little chain link. So what that does is it lets us reuse any cell that we've already got. Then it's delete cell, and then onion skin. So I'm going to switch layer for that. So what onion skin does, it just lets you see the previous cells. And then we've got all of the camera controls. Okay, hopefully that makes sense as a basic idea of just how the timeline works, and I'll start looking into the slightly more complicated things that actually let you animate in a second. Okay, so those are the basic functions. I'll move on to how to use the light table. So the light table, what the light table lets you do is if you have a, say, we're going to just do the bouncing ball frame here. Come on. And a frame here. the light table can do is help with this. You just go to the hamburger menu here, light table, register onion skin images, and then you go to the light table. You have to hit enable light table first, but after that you can click and drag your frames into new positions. Let's just change that. So say I want the in-between to be here, I can just take the light table up like that. And have a very easy in-between. Painless. It's particularly good when you have, oh, that one. It's particularly good when you have very, very close or you want to be very accurate with a animation. Just hide this. Back, front, round. There we go. Very good for things like this where you can just hit light table, register onion skins, and then you can just put a little dot here, a little dot there. Then you can overlap. It's a bit too large that pen. Put it down to 4. So that's how you do slightly more complicated in-betweening without having to worry about losing shapes, because otherwise you'd have to in-between with that. Okay, making sense so far? Okay, good. Next thing. So the next thing is probably the camera tool. The camera tool is difficult to say the least. So let me just draw a quick little character somewhere. We'll draw them here. I'm doing 0 detail because it just will slow things down. And the camera tool is an animation. You want to hit new animation layer, 2D folder. Now you have to drag the folder that you want the camera settings to apply to inside. And this is where the nice camera tools come in. So the camera tools are down here. First one is enable keyframe. See the little diamond that appears? That's the beginning. So let's take over, actually, well, to extend the timeline, you just grab the blue line, just drag it across, and to make the keyframes longer, you just once again hit and pull across. So for the camera, we're going to have a slow pan like that. Go to Object Select, which is, I think it's, let's see, where's Object Select? There is Object Select, and you grab the corner. That's how you zoom in. So that'll be the first thing we do. We'll zoom into them. Like that. Okay. The next thing we'll do is we'll do a pan. So go up to Edit, change canvas size. Just going to extend it along like that. And then we're going to grab our keyframe. We're going to drag it over like that. You'll see that there's numbers at the side as well for the transform if you want to be slightly more accurate than this. And that's how you pan across. If the figure is not inside the folder, the pan will not apply. And if you have one thing in the folder and one thing outside of the folder, the pan will only apply to one of them. So watch out for that. So that's how camera settings work. So the next thing after, just undo these. So the next thing after that is slide settings, which I think is this one. What slide settings does is it lets you slide the frame. So have this here, here. So rather than the camera moving, the object is moving. So that's good for things like cars or whatever. Okay, so after that, that's pretty much all of the really simple things to use. I'll go into the more helpful things now. So if you've been using Clip Studio a lot and you want to make your animations better, and you don't want to continually sort of like have one layer for coloring, another layer for, well, it would be one folder for roughs, one folder for clean, one folder for colors, another folder for effects. If you don't want to do that, one of the better ways of setting up is to just hit new folder, go to layer, create folder and insert layer. Sorry, I need to hit cell first. Sorry, hit cell. Then it's create folder, and then you can build things up, like you can have see if we can rename this. It's not letting me rename it right now, but anyway, you can have one raster folder and another vector layer on top. Sorry if this isn't very clear, but it means you can do your rough here. And you can use the vector layer on top to clean. And as soon as you hit new cell, it remembers that format that you picked, so you can once again do your rough in one layer and the cleanup on another. Or if you wanted, you could have a layer for coloring, and so on. That's just to stop having too many folders just build up. And one of the benefits to having a vector folder rather than a raster folder is because the vector control tools means that you can effectively redraw everything after the fact quite dramatically. So let's go to this one. So if I wanted to, I could go back to the hat, come back in and adjust the hat a little, like that. It's just a good way of just neatening things up a little. Yes, it's a very handy tool. It's saved a lot of issues. There's other things like redraw vector line width, which lets you make the lines thicker or thinner based on what you need. Let's see if I can get that up. It's not giving me the tool for that. But there are other ones like redraw vector line width, correct vector line width, which basically means you can make the lines chunkier just with one tool, or narrower. Particularly good if you're indecisive. Connect vector lines, so that's basically if you're a bit skittish and have a gap, you can sort of just come in like that. There you go, you have the line connected. Like that. So yeah, really useful for just correcting small little things that are slightly out. Okay, so after that, I think it's the only other thing to sort of talk about is the things like rulers in Clip. So I'm not sure how many of you know how to use rulers or grids in Clip, but for some reason it seems to be the most underrated tool and one of the more complex to use. So you just go up to Layer, Ruler, Create Perspective Ruler, and then you select whatever one you want. We're just going to go for 2 point for now. it'll bring you to operation and object. You just hit the center of it and you'll see that there's this button called grid just at the side. If you hit the one at the far right, you have a grid that you can play with that lets you do a lot. Not only is it very handy for just getting figures down quickly, it actually works with the templates as well, so you can put circles in perspective really easily. So never again do you have to fear the ever annoying issue of having to square a circle. See if I can find the other thing. No, it's not going to play, but there is a way to get it to work with the 3D model as well, but it's difficult to use. So I just recommend just playing around with that. But the ruler and all 3D models can interact correctly, and you can drop 3D models into perspective without having to do it by hand. Oh, just one little note for 3D rulers. If you want to draw freehand, you need to switch off snap, because otherwise literally every line will be straightened out. So this is with where is it? So make sure you have snap off if you want the lines to be slightly freer, because that's what it's like with snap. Switch snap off, and you can draw where you want. So that's the basics of rulers. Okay, so other than that, everything after this is just weird things that Clip Studio does and ways you can make it to work slightly better for you. So if you have a keyboard, one of the things you're going to want to do is set up shortcuts. The most useful ones that I've found is just go forward one frame, well, one cell, go back a cell. So Clip has a lot of options for where you can have shortcuts. But select cell, previous A, select next cell S. That just lets you skim through animation quickly. So let's see. So A and S as frame forward, frame back. Okay, other weird things are in edit, If you're animating, you cannot flip the canvas, which is annoying. However, you can set up a shortcut key for it. View F. So it's not an option that's available unless you set it up as a shortcut. Don't really think there's anything else to say. I think that's pretty much everything that's useful technically.